Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our best practices in library assessment spring event, virtual spring event featuring Dr. Becky Croxton, who's going to be our speaker today. I'm Heather Smith, the Vice President of the Metrolina Library Association, and thank you all for joining us. Becky, you want to take it away?
Sure thing. Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much to Metrolina for inviting me to come and talk with you today. And thank you all who are logged in and willing to spend a bit of time learning and thinking about library assessment. I'm really honored to have this opportunity to share a little bit about what I think about and do every day on the job. So I'm really excited to be here. So when I sat down to think about what I hoped that you would take away from our time together, I came up with these 4 objectives. I hope that you will come away with a clear understanding of what assessment is, understand the value and the key steps involved in assessment. And we'll spend some time thinking about ideas for how to get started, and then I'll wrap up if time by talking about and hopefully demonstrating some user-friendly and free or low-cost tools with what I think are low learning curves. So a little bit about me and what brought me here. So I've been working in libraries for about 12 years here in the Charlotte area, starting out as a library assistant at CPCC's branch campus libraries. I worked at the Levine campus at one time, the Harper campus, the Harris campus, Central Library, and even did a couple of brief stints up at the campus on the north end of town, the Maracas campus. I was just to fill in there. So I've been around a lot at CPCC, and I also worked at Johnson & Wales University after I earned my library degree from UNCG. And I see many of my classmates from UNCG who have joined us, and also I teach sometimes as adjunct for UNCG, and I see a few of my students. So it was nice to see your names and to know that you're here. So it was when I was working at Johnson & Wales in 2010 that I learned about Metrolina Library Association and became a member. It's one of my favorite associations. I really love the camaraderie that we've all built here. It was also during my time at Johnson & Wales that I began learning about and dabbling just a little bit in library assessment. And after working 2 part-time jobs, one for CPCC and one at Johnson & Wales as librarians, I decided to return to UNCG in 2012 to pursue a PhD in education with a doctoral minor in educational research methodologies. And it was while working through my PhD program that I fell in love with the research, evaluation, and assessment side of education and libraries. So I was really fortunate that an ideal position as head of assessment for UNC Charlotte's Atkins Library opened up very soon after I graduated. It was like a match made in heaven, at least from my standpoint. And so I've been working at UNC Charlotte since 2017 and have been running up full steam with all things library assessment since. So before we dig into things, I wanted to first explain what the difference is between assessment, evaluation, and research. These are often terms that are used interchangeably, and they sometimes can go together, but they really all are kind of different things in their own right. So when thinking about assessment, I like to think about continuous improvement and data-driven decision-making. Assessment is usually inwardly focusing, meaning that you, your students, or your meaning about you, your students, or your organization. You want to see how you're doing, how things are going in order to make improvements for moving forward. So for me, assessment is all about continuous improvement. And in order to improve, you need to do assessment. When I think about evaluation, I think of this as kind of like giving a grade in a course or or some kind of measurement of success or accomplishment. In other words, did your students learn what you intended them to learn? Was the program a success? Again, assessment and evaluation very much are related and often go hand in hand, but just a little bit different. And then research is a little bit different altogether. So insights or ideas gained from assessment can lead to research studies and vice versa, but the purposes are very different. So with assessment, you're working to understand and improve your own organizational services or processes. With research, you're more outward facing by conducting a systematic investigation into a specific field of study in order to make a contribution to a larger body of knowledge. Research is often guided by theory, whereas assessment is guided by practical needs for improvement. So I put together, it just gave a little bit of thought about why assess, and I put together this little word cloud thing. Assessment is critical to organizations for a lot of reasons. For example, have you ever had a hunch that something maybe wasn't working as well as it could be, or you heard some anecdotes from people maybe at the circulation desk or whatever about a perceived issue and made a change or a decision based on a limited set of information? But then things really didn't improve. You know, they stayed the same, maybe made matters worse, who knows? So it's really valuable to slow down and be intentional about using assessment data to drive your decisions. By data, I don't mean just numbers and figures and calculations, though those do drive a lot of the work I do. But data can also be information you collect from open-ended comments on a survey, or that you analyze in a methodical way, or it could be information gained from interviews, focus groups, or observational studies. So data can mean a lot of different things. Data can also be pulled from systems that you have in place, such as your integrated library system, you know, your catalog, lib insights. If you subscribe to SpringShare and have lib guides, then there's data on the back end that you can access for that. Or if you use the SpringShare product to track reference interactions, for example, then there's data that you can pull on the back end to analyze. You can also be gathering data about attendance at library events or workshops or instruction sessions, gate counts. Libraries have a lot of data, and it's just up to you as an assessment person to harness and wrangle that data and use it in meaningful ways. You don't want to just be playing with data all the time for no particular purpose. You know, it can just be a real time consumer. But if you kind of have certain questions that you want to continually ask of your services, then that's a good way to go about it. So data is really all around you, and you might as well leverage it to guide your organization's decision making. And using data to drive your decisions and make improvements based on continuous assessments can lead to better and more effective decisions and change. Having data to back up your proposals, decisions, or budgetary requests can go a long way with helping make your case that more funding or changes are needed with those who hold the purse strings or make the decisions for your library. Using assessment data also gives you credibility. People respect you when you have some data to back up your claims. Helps you make better decisions, can help save costs by making knowledgeable decisions rather than continuous trial and error, and helps you keep planning and improving. You know, libraries, we don't want to just be static and keep doing things the way we always did when our population and their needs are changing continuously. So we want to be able to continuously meet their needs and improve. So I mentioned that doing assessment is a very intentional process, and I find that it typically works best if you follow kind of a certain order of events. You know, sometimes some of these steps swap out or happen in different orders, but this is kind of the logical flow of things. So assessment, again, flows in continuous cycle, and it should begin with a plan. So you might decide as a library or a team to make a plan for change. At a high level, this plan might be your library strategic plan. It could also be a plan you map out for something, your own initiative in your department, or some new thing you want to try to improve, again, a process or a service in some way. But before implementing your plan, you should take a step back and think through, how will I know if the changes we are preparing to implement, how are we going to know if they made a difference? So think about how you will measure the extent to which you met your objective set forth in the plan before you implement the plan or the change. So help you avoid the common situation we often, probably all of us have found ourselves in at one time or another. Boy, I wish I would have done this, or boy, I wish I would have been keeping track of things from the beginning. So planning intentionally ahead of time of how you're going to assess can really go a long ways. So once you have your methods and your metrics sorted out, then it's time to implement your new program or service or modification to your program. You might collect data about the change. You might collect data at the beginning, the middle, and the end, kind of to track the progress. You may be collecting data just throughout. I mean, maybe you're collecting maybe you already have data like reference interactions. They're already being logged, but then maybe your plan is that you're going to review points in time to see how things changed over time. Really, the way that you collect and analyze your data and the plan is all dependent upon the project. So there's no one set way to do it. So you start with your big picture plan, you determine how you're going to measure success at the beginning, then you implement your project, and then you collect and analyze your data, whether that's throughout or in the end, or if you're going to do a survey. And then with all of that data, then as you near the reporting cycle, then you're going to analyze the data, create reports, and then work with your leadership team to strategize. So together, review the findings. Did things go as expected? If yes, what do you want to keep doing the same thing, or do you want to refine to even do better or try to do better? Or did things not go as well as expected? If so, do you want to scrap the whole program, or do you want to re-envision how it's going to do or try something different? So, I mean, sometimes programs are just a complete bust and you just throw them out, but most generally you just kind of do a little retooling and refinement, and then whatever you decide, well, unless you throw it out, but whatever you decide, if you keep going as is or making some changes, then the assessment cycle begins again, and it just goes round and around until you feel like you have a very smooth and satisfactory process in place, and maybe your strategic plan will identify new goals that then you'll work on. So to put this in context, let me tell you a quick little story. So once upon a time, our library had a website that got to the point that we didn't feel so good about it anymore. The design was starting to look a little outdated. The architecture was complicated, and we had a hunch that patrons were having a hard time finding critical information that we wanted them to be able to access easily. So on the left is a screenshot of our old website. Sorry, it's a little blurred. I had to go to the web time machine and find an old version. It was kind of tricky to find, but so it's a screenshot of our old site. And so together, our assessment team, which was comprised at the time of me and a user experience librarian, worked with our library's website advisory group. I also happen to be the facilitator of that group. We worked with that group and the technical team at our library to come up with a plan. We knew we wanted to change for the better. We'd been trying for the last couple of years to make quick fixes to the website with no real noticeable improvements. So together, as a larger group, we decided we needed to start from scratch and build a completely new website. But before we put our design hats on for building the website, we conducted almost a year of assessments that included gathering feedback from online surveys, digging into Google Analytics to determine the top tasks patrons performed on our site and the top searches. We conducted focus groups with students, one-on-one interviews with students, faculty, staff, library employees, and even community members. We conducted what I've always called a gallery walk, which was kind of an interactive survey experience where we selected 15 different library websites that our advisory team thought had good promise. And we created big posters of these websites. Then we created a paper pencil survey along with a post-it note activity so that participants in the experience could walk around with their clipboards, look at all these sample websites, and then using a process, kind of identify what styles and features they really liked. We also conducted usability testing and lots of pop-up testing throughout the process, particularly on the menu structure, so we could determine what architecture made the best sense to our users. We involved patrons and stakeholders throughout the process. So our assessment team collected and analyzed data throughout. We shared frequent reports to our library's advisory group. And let's see. With all of this information, we were then confident as a library and felt ready to develop our new library website that is now user-centered, task-based, and gives prominence to the things our users use most. So we launched our new site in January of this year. And so by this summer, we will be live for 6 months. So now it's time to start thinking about more assessments like usability testing to see how well things are working for our patrons. Based on our next round of testing or assessments, I'm certain we're going to come up with yet more new insights about how to refine and improve, and then we'll start the whole assessment cycle again. Especially something like websites, you do need to, this is a great area for assessment and continuous improvement, especially as patrons' preferences and needs change. So, okay, how can I get started with assessment at library? So thinking back to that little website scenario, you may think, wow, that's a lot of stuff to do. And I didn't share our website story to overwhelm you, but rather to illustrate how assessment drove the website redesign. The assessments allowed us to make informed decisions based on data rather than opinions or hunches. And it helped reduce the emotional and sometimes contentious aspects that often come with decision making in design, and forced us to focus on data, using data to guide the change. And it was a very exciting and positive process, and I think a great example of an assessment cycle success story. So back to the question on the previous slide, how can I get started with assessment? It may seem like there's a million things to assess because we have data everywhere. And there are a lot of things to assess, but instead of getting overwhelmed, I recommend thinking instead about, okay, what data, oh, sorry, lost my train of thought. So instead of thinking about, okay, what data do we have? What can we collect and how can we assess it? I recommend letting the strategic plan be your guide in what you do, in what you assess. All libraries have strategic plans, at least I know the public libraries and the university and college libraries do. Not sure about the smaller organizations, but I'm sure you have some goals that your leadership team has set forth. So of course it is useful to monitor or track trends related to usage of your building and your resources and your attendance at events, etc. So you can make decisions about staffing, hours, collections, etc. But in order to bring about real continuous improvement, I think it's critical to start with the goals, objectives, and expected performance outcomes set out in the strategic plan. And I'm going to use a bit of information from the UNC Charlotte Atkins Library to illustrate my points here. So in our library strategic plan, we have 5 major goals that we work on across the 5-year cycle. And we revisit those goals in our project or our progress on a yearly basis. So I'm going to just use, so we have 5 goals. I'm just going to use goal 1 as an example. So goal 1 indicates that we will support the curriculum. So that's at a pretty lofty level. So we have, in a sense, operationalized it into 3 main objectives, and I'm just sharing objective 1 here with you. So our first objective for our goal 1 is to engage with students at their point of need. Again, this is still a little bit hard to wrap your head around, at least it is for me. So we as a library established expected performance outcomes and associated tasks for how we could accomplish the objective. So as a library, we decided to focus on the 4 tasks listed at the bottom of this slide to help us reach the objective. So we said throughout this year that we would add pop-up help to all website pages, create a library research appointment form in Connect, which is a student portal, integrate a new librarian role in Canvas, which is our online learning management system, and embed library guides directly into the Canvas courses, not link them, but to actually embed the guide right in the learning management systems course shell. These things related to Canvas are 2 separate initiatives, but they definitely are closely related. And then finally, we decided we would investigate and try out different service models for the circulation and research desks. Previously, these 2 desks, Circ desk and a research desk, were in separate locations, and reference questions were tracked separately. So the people who are doing the research help track their reference interactions through one data entry portal, and the Circ staff enter theirs in a different data portal. In the new model that we're trying out now, or at least we were until we went on physical hiatus from the library. In our new model, the desks are now combined into one, and the circ staff and the reference librarian sit side by side. So we have these 4 things that we're working on this year. One second. So we have these 4 things that we're working with here to try to engage with students at their point of need, that objective there. But how will we measure the extent to which we met the objective? That's where the fun part of assessment comes in. So as soon as the strategic plan was outlined for the year, the assessment team, the strategic planning committee, and the assessment committee, both of those committees are just standing committees in our library. We put our heads together to determine the metrics and methods for measuring these things. We thought through what data was automatically collected through our library systems that could be used, and also talked about whether we needed to collect some new or additional data and how we would go about doing that. So for the online chat, let's see, for online chat, research consultations, and usage of LibGuides that are embedded in Canvas, those data are already being collected. So we just needed to wrangle and analyze those data. So that was pretty easy. For the adoption of the librarian role in Canvas, we simply worked with our Canvas integration team. They're housed out of our Center for Teaching and Learning, our faculty educational support unit. And that Canvas integration team was able to tell us how many Canvas courses had the librarian. The librarian role is a special role that we recently created to have that librarian role embedded into Canvas or adopted into the Canvas courses. We also decided we needed to conduct a student survey so we could develop a benchmark measure of overall student satisfaction. That's kind of related to that service desk model. So our first metric was to document if we actually did the things we said we were going to do. And that was an easy measure to track and document. Yes, 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 and yes. So that's just the simplest way you can document assessment is, did you do it or did you not do it? Let's see, the next item on the list was about integrating chat on every web page. Remember, our objective is we want to engage with students at their point of need. So when they need help, we want to be there for them. So again, the online chat sessions are documented through Lib Insights or Lib Analytics. So I was able to pull the number of online chat sessions from fall 2018 and compare it to fall 2019. Didn't include spring data since we're not quite wrapped up with our spring semester here. But comparing fall to fall, our online chat sessions increased by 95% from fall to fall. We can't say that the chat pop-up created the uptick in chats logged, but there are some pretty strong indicators that it may have indeed played a role. So then we would report that at the end of the year and discuss, are changes to our system needed, or we just want to keep on doing what we're doing. The next thing was a research consultation request form. So about a year and a half ago, our head of research and instruction wanted to make it really easy for students to schedule research consultations with their subject librarian. So we had the idea, what if we develop this online form and it's integrated into the student portal? So it was launched the beginning of 2018-19, or right before 2018-19 academic year began. And in our first year, we had 44 appointments that were scheduled in that way. Students can also just email their research librarian and schedule appointments that way as well. So we've had a slow start, but in the next year, 1920, again, I'm comparing fall to fall here, we had a 27% increase in the forum usage from 1 year to the next. So it's excellent. Things are trending upward. I'm not sure if we feel like we're reaching as many students as we want. So it'll be time at the end of this assessment cycle to talk about, do we want that to increase? And if so, are we going to do some things differently, maybe to market or promote this option? So the next task or action on the strategic plan for this goal was about Canvas integration. Remember, Canvas is our learning management system. So kind of pose two questions for ourselves. Are librarians embedded in Canvas and librarian role more courses this year than last? So we had last year as our baseline. So now, as we're wrapping up 2019-20, we can ask the Canvas integration team how many adoptions have occurred, and so that's just a simple comparison. And then remember, we also have been working to get course library guides embedded into Canvas shells. That adoption is really up to the teaching faculty member. So the adoption is growing, but it's not fully implemented across the board. So what we did there was we randomly selected 30 course guides that were embedded in Canvas and 40 course guides that were not embedded in Canvas. We established a baseline of the number of views on the homepage for the guide in 2017-18, used that as a benchmark. And then we tracked the usage of those same guides in 2018-19. And so you can see for the LibGuides in Canvas, there was almost a 20% increase in views from 1 year to the next. Versus for those that were not embedded into Canvas, there was actually a decrease in the number of views. We'll be excited to review the data from this year, 2019-20, and see using those same guides, those same randomly selected guides as a gauge to see if there are increase, decrease, etc. in the library guide views. So again, that's just another fun way to look at and assess how well we're doing in reaching our students at their point of need. And finally, for the fourth task of investigating and trying out new service models, we decided this needed a multifaceted assessment approach. So student survey data is one method we'll use. We last conducted a full student survey of our student body in fall 2018, before the new integrated service desk model occurred. Our next student survey is scheduled to take place in February 2020. So this will allow us to compare satisfaction scores, usage ratings, and findings compared from fall 2018 to spring 2020. And then, as I noted earlier, the CERC staff and the reference staff currently track incoming questions via their separate data entry portals through LibInsights. So with these data, then we can compare how the numbers and types of questions recorded by each of these entities looks before and after integration. before and after the model change. And then finally, with the new model, we continuously or periodically conduct pop-up tests at the service desk about patron satisfaction needs or patron satisfaction or needs. And by pop-up tests, what I mean is very informal. Sometimes we roll up a big whiteboard and put it right next to the service desk and pose a question. How was your service today? And students can either write on a post-it note or use the expo marker and share their comments. So then we take a picture of that and analyze the comments and use it kind of for a little informal feedback. So as you near the end of the reporting cycle or the year, it's time to analyze and report or share the findings with your decision makers. This is the time to discuss what did you learn, what did the data tell you, what worked well, what didn't work so well. And then based on those findings and debriefing, then it's time to strategize and think about what needs to continue, what might need to be refined, tossed out, or completely reimagined. So as you retool, refine, or reimagine, then it's time to work through the assessment cycle again. Again, this is a continuous improvement loop. So that was a lot about kind of how I frame my work and think about my work. And now I just wanted to share some quick ideas for tools you can use really with low learning curves and can really just help you do your work in very simple and fun ways. So I'm going to do a couple little demos. You know, it's always a little scary to do live demos, but we'll give it a try. So most of us these days have access to Excel or Google or the Google Suite. You know, Google access is often provided through your work, but you can also have your Google accounts. You can just have your own for free. So Google and Excel plus the pivot table feature that's embedded within these programs should be your best friends if you're going to do assessment. I'll show you how to do a quick pivot table using Google Sheet, but just know that the process is very, very similar in Excel. It's actually a little easier in Excel. But just so I'm not switching back and forth with too many programs, I'm going to go ahead and open up Google Sheets. And this is a data set that I pulled down from LibInsights about circulation desk questions from January through March of this year. You can see, I always find it's useful to take a quick tour of the data. You can see we have a timestamp. That's when the question was logged. We have the question source, meaning was it a drop-in? Did somebody call? Was it a chat? I'm not sure if there's any other varieties here or not. And then our circ staff also documents the type of question. So we have about 8 or 9 categories of different question types. And then this last column, month, I just put in there manually, just so I could demonstrate how easy pivot tables really can be. So remember, we're in Google Sheets here. It's super simple. You just highlight your data. I'm going to just do Control-Alt to do that. And then I'm going to go to Data and then Pivot. If you're in Excel, you would just click Insert, and then there'd be an option for Pivot Table right there. But we're going to go to Data. And then down about just past halfway, there's an option for a Pivot Table. And then you can just do the default here. We're going to put our pivot table in a new sheet rather than the existing sheet that we're working on. So still the same file, just a new tab. So now we have this new pivot table 3 tab. They're usually numbered consecutively, and I've already played around a little bit, so I'm on number 3. So what I would do if I wanted to create a quick visualization of these circ stats is I would go under, let's see, I'm going over to the right side of the screen. Under rows, I would add, let's see, here's the 5 columns in our data set. I guess I would add, let's just take a look at question type. So here are our various types of questions that are posed at the reference desk. And then under columns, let's look at the number of questions coming in per the spring months. So under columns, I would just simply select add and month. So now we've got our months across here, our questions in the first column, but we don't have any numbers yet. So adding in the numbers is really simple. You just go to values, and we're going to count the number of questions per type by month. So we're going to be counting by question type. And then that just automatically populates for you. So now we can see what question type is the most prominent. Remember, this is the circulation desk, so they get all kind of questions. So it seems that library information is the most prominent. You can also see that February was the busiest. And our library closed to the public in mid-March, so it's not unexpected that our numbers are a little lower in March. But I just wanted to show you how easy it is. Let's say we just wanted to look at the counts by month. Let's see here. I'm going to just remove question type. And now we're just simply looking at the counts by month. And then if you wanted to create a quick visualization, you could just highlight these things, the months and the totals. Go to Insert, Chart. And I'm not crazy about pie charts, but here we can see now we have just this very simple visualization about totals by month. We can add in data labels. And if I were sharing this with a larger audience, or like for professional purposes, I would pretty things up. But I just want you to know how very quick and easy it is to create pivot tables that can visualize your data. I'm going to show you another thing now. Let me go back to the slide for just a minute. So another newly discovered gem for me is the Google Data Studio. I'd heard about it, but it wasn't until I went to a conference last fall, a library assessment conference, that I learned how amazing Google Data Studio is. One nice thing about Google Data Studio is it's very easy to put together and share a dashboard that kind of looks like a professional support or professional report to others. It's super easy and easily shareable, but your viewers also need to be have Google accounts. So let me show you what I mean and give you a very tiny quick demo. Again, I don't expect that you're probably absorbing all of the steps, but I just mostly want you to know how easy things are and truly valuable they can be. So again, this is Google Data Studio. And back on the slide, Google Data Studio is a little bit hard to find, but if you use this link, then you'll get set up with Google Data Studio, and then it's associated with all your other Google Drive files and folders. So back to Google Data Studio. So this is a quick little data studio I created using that same set of data about the circulation desk questions. You know, it can just, you can just put it together. It looks very sharp, and you can just send a link to people you want to be able to see it. But I'm going to try to reproduce something along these lines so you can see how fast and easy it is. So right now I'm kind of in the professional view mode, or like the published view mode, but I'm going to go into the edit mode. So now I have a few different things I can do here. And I'm going to go to a brand new page so you can see what it's like to kind of start from scratch. So I'm just going to add a page. So your Google Data Studios, you can just add lots of different pages, connect to different data sets, and create data visualizations about lots of things. It doesn't all need to be the same data set. So let's say I wanted to create a new bar chart about the circulation desk questions. So I just simply go to Insert. I'm just going to choose guess I'll choose that bar chart. And you have a lot of flexibility. I've just got this little floating window. I'm going to expand it to as large as I want. Right now, it looks like it's the data defaulted to question source, whether questions are coming in via drop-in, telephone, chat, and email. That may be of interest to you as well. But to keep things consistent with the other things we've looked at, let's change this out to be question type. So I'm just going to click on this to activate the chart area. And I know it probably looks a little small on your screen, but over on the right side of the screen, you have two options: data, style. So those are just toggles. You can also switch the type of chart. I'm going to turn mine on its side. Again, you can always revert back to or try different things. So over here under data is where you kind of set your parameters. So under data dimension, I'm going to change out, I don't want question source, rather I want question type. So I just clicked on that, and I see question type here. So now I have my however many 9 questions or so. And it automatically defaults to counting the number of questions per category, which is what I want. And then to pretty things up a little, you just go to the style section. So toggle from data to style. Maybe you don't want blue, maybe you want a color that's more appealing to you. I'm going to try purple. Having data labels is really helpful. The older I get, the bigger the font size I prefer. So let's see about that. So you can change the font size, font color, etc. Looking for that option. So increase the font size here. Also want to increase the font size in these data labels if I can figure it out. I don't necessarily want to keep you here all day while I'm playing with buttons, but that gives you an idea. And then when you're ready to share, you simply just go to share, get your report link, or you can even embed it or download it as a PDF file, and you just send it on to people that you want to have it take a look at. And this data is all connected here to the Google Sheet file, that CircDesk questions Google Sheet. If I wanted to change it to a different data source, sorry, I clicked on the wrong button. Then you can say new data source, and then you just find your Google Sheets. And I've got like a million Google Sheets, and you choose the Google Sheet that has the corresponding data. So again, I'm kind of a big fan of Google Data Studio. Super user-friendly, and the output can look very nice. And then finally, I'm going to close out of this. I spend a lot of time in Tableau. So Tableau is a data visualization tool and allows you to really gain some new insights about data that you may not have already understood or known about. So I'll show you again. There's a free version of Tableau that you can use online. I know that it's not as extensive as the desktop license, but it'll give you an opportunity to play with Tableau and see what you think. And there's also a 14-day trial license you can try. But I just want to show you again how easy it is. So I'm going to open up, this is my Tableau file. I simply associated it with an Excel file. So this is my Excel file, CircDesk questions. I just went to like file, I already have this loaded, new data source, and then I selected a file from my computer. You can point it to a file in Google Sheets on your computer or an online server like MySQL. There's lots of ways, but the easiest thing to do if you're just getting started is to use an Excel file. So this is a mirror image of that data file that we've already seen a couple of times. And to create some easy visualizations, super easy. We can create a visualization by question type. So here are these are these question categories. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think we can see what you're doing.
Oh, you can't? Oh no.
No, ma'am.
What do you see?
The visualization tools like Tableau slide.
Did you even see my Excel things in Google Sheets?
I don't think so, no.
No? Oh, I gave a whole demo and you didn't see what I was doing?
Unfortunately, no.
I think some of us saw the Google, but not.
I saw the Google Sheets for sure.
Yeah, we saw the
You
Google
saw the
Sheets.
Google. Did
It's
you
just
see
when you
Google?
started with Tableau, that's when the visualization, when we
Did you
stopped
see
following
Google? Did you
Oh,
see
yeah.
Google Data Studio?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let me figure out how I can do this then.
And now we've all unmuted, so it's general anarchy. I love it.
Okay, I'll
Bear
do it.
with me. Bear with me for just a little moment. All right. Can you see Tableau now? It just looks
No,
like.
now we're just seeing your PowerPoint slides, Becky.
Oh heavens.
From this side view.
Okay. All right. Give me a minute. New share. How about that? I think we're getting there. How
There we
about now?
go. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Well, thankfully you stopped me before I went too far down the rails. So thank goodness. So I'll back up just a little bit. So I opened up Tableau. I have the desktop version. So I have all the bells and whistles, but the free version looks and works very much the same. Then I opened up a Tableau file, then I associated it with my data source. So you just went to data and new data, and I was able to connect it with an Excel file that is that same mirror image of the Google Sheets file. So same data that I've just pulled into or associated with Tableau. Now to create visualizations that are interactive, this is where it gets fun. I'm going to pull this out because that was, I demoed that already when you couldn't see. All right, so starting with a brand new worksheet, let's see if we can kind of reproduce that same experience of looking at question type. So we have these dimensions and then we have the measures. Those are like the calculations. So you can just pull up question type and then pull in the number of records. We're just counting the number of records by question type. And already we have a really simple data visualization. And you can customize it. You can put it into your branded color scheme, get rid of some of the chart clutter, increase the font size and color so you can see it a little better. Add some data labels. See how fast this is? And then what's really neat about it, Tableau, is you can create filters that then your viewers can interact with. And what I mean here is I can add in a filter so people could look, how do things compare month to month, for example. So I could just do show filter. Let's see. Or we can also add in question source. I'm not going to worry too much about prettying things up today. But so now you can just say, okay, let's look at only January. So this is what things look like in January. How did that change from February? Really the same trends. Or let's look at question source. So these are all question types that come in. Let's see what the questions that come in via chat look like. So there's questions by chat compared to the questions by telephone. Still the same trends. Or by email. Oh, there is only one email question. Most of the email questions go to the reference librarians or the drop-in questions. We can create another quick view. Let's just look at activity by month. So I'm just pulling month up and number of records. Just 1 second. That did not look like I expected it to look. You can go over here to show me and get some different views. So this is just your basic line graph. You could also, or bar graph, you could also do a line graph. It looks kind of ugly. If you had more months, it would be more interesting. But again, it's super easy, or you could just look at it in a tabular format. It's super easy to try out different visualizations. And then if you wanted to create a dashboard, so each of these are visualizations, but if you wanted to create a dashboard, you just go to this next feature where you're kind of combining things together into, it's like looking at a dashboard on your car, for example. I'm just going to create a couple of frames here where I'm going to put my data visualizations. So here's one sheet. That's the question type. Let's see. And I want my filters to apply to everything, all using this data source. All right. I didn't really want my filters to go there, so we're just going to move them over here for a minute. So we've got question type. Let's see what that other thing was we created. It was by month. I'm just making the font so you can actually see it. Hopefully you can see it. One second, and then we'll talk about it. If you need to go back and make adjustments, you can just go back and do that, and they'll show up on your dashboard. So now we have two dashboards. We have filters that will allow us to look at, oh, I've selected nothing. We can look at by question source, how things change. So it allows your users to be interactive with the data. Or we can look only at February and March, for example. So again, I just want to show you the beauty of data visualizations. We can see that library information is the most frequently asked question over all different sources. And we can see how things change from month to month. So that was a very rudimentary example. So I'm going to keep the demos to that, otherwise I'll lose you all and you'll get too sleepy. So let's just recap a little bit about assessment. So assessment is all about being intentional in gathering and analyzing data in order to make sound decisions for adjusting programs or processes for continuous improvement. And I put a little tiny picture of that assessment cycle. Remember, we plan, we determine our metrics and methods, we implement the change or intervention, we collect and analyze our data, we report and strategize, and then we refine, we retool, or we reimagine. There's great value that lies in assessment. It allows for better decision making, gives you credibility when you have data to support your requests or proposals, helps you make improvement, and it can actually save money by having data behind your decisions rather than oh God, what slide am I showing? It's good I've got somebody keeping track of me. It's my recap slide. I've got to get back to the right program. Sorry about that. Those of you who've been in my classes know that I need a lot of coaching sometimes. All right, so let's recap. I already recapped about the meaning of assessment and the key steps. The value, it just really helps you guide decision making in meaningful and intentional ways. There's a lot of ways to think about assessment, but I find that starting with what is outlined in your strategic plan as your roadmap can be really, really helpful. And finally, there are a lot of tools that are free or already at your fingertips that can help you gain insights about your data, such as Excel, Google Sheets, Google Data Studio, and even Tableau. So I think that is it for the day. And I would love to engage in any questions that you may have, or if you'd like me to talk about something else, that's fine too. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks for doing this for us, Becky. Does anybody have questions?
I have a quick question. This is Sarah Campbell from JWU Providence.
Sure.
Thank you so much for this delightful and really engaging webinar.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was excited to kind of jump into some of the assessment tools. I am the reference and instruction librarian, and I'm wondering, have you ever applied any of these concepts to the instruction arena?
We are working on that. So for instruction so far, we have just been, well, from what I'm doing in my seat, we have been gauging, tracking who we're reaching through instruction, what departments we're reaching through instruction. So that element of things. The concepts also certainly apply to learning outcomes, and if you're achieving the learning outcomes in your actual instruction sessions. And our head of research and instruction is actually kind of compiling a list of tools and ideas about how to do that. And then I hope to be able to work with him and the instruction team to think that through and how we will measure student learning. We have been dabbling a little bit with aligning library engagement with measures of student success. I know those measures of student success aren't always an accurate reflection of student learning, like if students are graduating on time or if they're being retained from year 1 to year 2, or changes in GPA, but we have found meaningful relationships between library engagement and student success. But as far as actual instruction, we're just kind of starting to get there. So thank you
so
for
much.
your question, Sarah.
Just a quick follow-up. Can you share a little bit more in terms of aligning engagement with student success? Did you have outside partnerships, or how did you access that kind of data? How did you align it with GPA, or what were your markers for success?
Sure. So our library dean and I, we received a grant from the Association of College and Research Libraries a couple of years ago that got us started. And so the first thing we did was aligned all of the student engagement across the library using like a key code, like a student identifier. So we got all of that aligned back through several years. And then we went through a lot of institutional review board work and worked with our Office of Institutional Research. So with that, we aligned with other campus partners like the tutoring center, the writing center, folks like that, and worked with the Office of Institutional Research, who then took our data sets that were aligned by individual student, and then the research office aligned it with like the GPA and like college, year in school, some of those demographic and pre-college things. So then we have this hugely amassed data set that then we can run some statistical analyses on, to look at different trends, how well we can predict GPA based on engagement, things like that. And I've also created recently a Tableau dashboard for internal use by our project partners that allows us to filter data in all kind of interesting ways. So we can filter if a student was a underrepresented minority, was a Pell student in the engineering college, and if they engage with the library or these other partners, and the relationships with GPA or retention, like things like that. So a lot of ways to look at student engagement